Something inside you already knows this. Your awakening may be being sabotaged. Hear that as a fact of attention, not an accusation. It is possible that the very impulse that pushes you toward remembering who you are is met again and again by forces that distract, doubt, and diffuse that return. I want to show you a practical way to test for a signature left by the source itself, a somatic key, and to offer a gentle activation that bypasses the usual traps. If this resonates, hold the word recognition in your mind now and, later, if you feel something, consider typing that single word in the comments. Centuries ago, in a set of texts discovered at Nag Hammadi, scholars found writings now labeled non-canonical, among them the Gospel of Philip. These works are not part of the mainstream biblical canon, but they preserve an alternative stream of early spiritual reflection, imagery, and practice. Some of those writings carry the claim that certain truths were never meant to require an intermediary. They were placed inside the human being as a form of signature, a way to verify origin from the source. Treat these texts as historical sources for a line of teaching. Whether you accept their metaphors or not, they point to a different way of remembering, an inward verification that does not depend solely on doctrine or institution. To make sense of why such knowledge might be hidden or marginalized, it helps to see the cosmological picture that the tradition offers. Picture the monad, the primordial source, as an origin of light and unity. From that source, fragments of consciousness disperse into creation. Then imagine a secondary craftsman, the demiurge, who shapes the material realm and establishes the systems that govern perception. Finally, there are archontes. Think of them as frequency patterns, not cartoon villains, that enforce distraction, amplify doubt, and create static between you and your memory of origin. They work like interference on a radio. If your attention maps to the wrong frequency, the signal of recognition becomes faint or noisy. This framework is metaphorical, but useful. It names the dynamics you already feel when awakening is uneven. The sudden rush of clarity, followed by a tidal wave of skepticism. The soft knowing that dissolves when someone else insists you are mistaken. The exhaustion that keeps the memory from taking root. Institutions and power structures, in historical terms, have often favored forms of knowledge that require mediation. That can create conditions where direct embodied verification is discouraged or dismissed. This is not a blanket indictment of faith communities. Many seek truth sincerely. But we must also acknowledge that systems which centralize authority often have incentives to control how people recognize their own source. The somatic check we will practice is a small, individual method of bypassing those dynamics by turning attention to the body. Before we begin the practical part, understand the ethical frame. I am not promising miracles, nor claiming that every person will feel an obvious sign. Some will sense something clearly, others will notice a whisper, a subtle warmth, a faint indentation, or nothing at all. None of those outcomes makes you less or more. Consider this an experiment in curiosity, a way to bring presence to your own instrument, your body, and a method to notice whether the noise that usually undermines you is active. We will do 3 checks. Each check has 3 parts. Slow breath to settle the nervous system, gentle touch to orient attention to the terrain of the body, and quiet observation without argument. If skeptical thoughts rise, and they will, treat them as part of the interference pattern. Notice them, do not take the bait, and return to sensation. The checks are simple, safe, and non-invasive. Do not press into pain. If anything feels uncomfortable, ease off. You can do these sitting in a chair, lying down, or standing, whatever allows you a few focused minutes. First check. The base of the skull. Origin. Bring your attention to the back of your head where the base of the skull meets the neck. Take 3 slow, even breaths, inhaling through your nose and exhaling through your mouth. Let each exhale soften the jaw, the face, the shoulders. When you feel grounded, With the fingers of one hand, very lightly explore the area where the skull slopes into the neck. You are not diagnosing, you are feeling. Some people notice a slight ridge, a tiny indentation, a cool or warm sensitivity, or simply a sense of being held there. Others may feel nothing at first, and that is fine. Stay curious. Breathe into that spot. If a thought says, "This is nonsense," notice the thought as interference and bring yourself back to the sensation at the base of the skull. Allow 5 to 10 slow breaths here. Even if all you perceive is the texture of your breath in the mouth or the gentle pressure of your fingers, note it. The tradition describes this area as a marker of origin, not as a clinical sign, but as a place where the memory of having come from the source can be touched. A small check here. You might feel a micro-movement, a slight shift in temperature, or an ease as if a knot is recognized. If you observe nothing, say to yourself softly, "I return to my body with patience," and move to the next check. The absence of sensation is simply part of the experiment, not a verdict. Second check. The lateral hand, perception. Rest your hands in your lap. Bring your attention to the outer edge of the hand that aligns with the little finger, the area where the flesh meets tendon and wrist. Again, breathe slowly 3 to 5 times. Gently run a fingertip along that edge, feeling for a subtle line, a different texture, or a slight elevation. Some people describe a faint seam, a sensitivity when touched, or a sense of sharpened attention in that limb. Others notice a pulsing, a tiny electric feeling, or nothing at all. Whatever occurs, notice it without judgment. If doubt rushes in, "I'm imagining this," treat that as the archontic interference doing its predictable work. Observe the doubt, and then return your attention to the tactile sensation. You are training an internal noticing, a way to let perception itself verify itself. If you become aware of any movement in your hand, a soft wave of warmth, a faint clarity, or even an emotional response, mark that mentally and breathe into it. If your awareness thins, that's also informative. The very thinning is a sign that distraction is working. In either case, stay soft and curious. Third check, the center of the chest, externum, command. Bring your palm to the center of your chest, over the sternum. Take a slow breath in and, as you exhale, rest your hand with gentle pressure. This is not a pressure intended to cause pain. Keep it comfortable. Breathe there for 5 to 8 slow breaths and notice any change, a sense of warmth, a subtle pulsing, a quieting that settles into the sternum, or a sensation of alignment. Traditions that speak of an externum mean a place where intention and authority can be felt, not an organ with medical diagnostic value. Some people report a sense of clarity when they touch this spot, as if a command circuit completes. Others feel calm, or an ease in the body, or nothing noticeable. If a mental voice says, "This is silly," or insists you are deceived, greet that voice as just another frequency and gently redirect attention to the chest. After you have completed these 3 checks, base of the skull, lateral hand, center chest, sit quietly and take stock. Notice whether any of the spots gave you even the subtlest signal: warmth, a texture change, a brief sensation. Even a small sensation is meaningful for this practice because the point is not to produce an experience, but to cultivate a way to notice what is here. If nothing appears, you have learned about the power of expectation and the presence of interference. Try again later with rest and patience. Now, understand the predictable sabotage. The moment you begin to experience anything that might point toward recognition, an internal chorus of skeptical thoughts tends to arise. They often sound like familiar, rational objections. You're imagining things. This is confirmation bias. This is superstition. Or, this is dangerous to believe. In this system of imagery, those thoughts are the signatures of archontic interference. They are not necessarily bad parts of you. They are patterns that have become habitual. The instruction here is specific and practical. When such doubt arises, do not enter into an internal debate. Do not argue with the thought. Instead, note it. There is doubt. And return your attention to the bodily sensation you were exploring. This is not denial of critique. It is a disciplined refusal to let the critique occupy the whole moment. Over time, the habit of noticing without arguing loosens the grip of interference. If you are practicing alone and find that the skeptical voice is loud, try a simple reframe. Imagine the voice as a radio station playing static. Label it, perhaps even silently, static. Then shift your listening to the body as if tuning to a clear channel. The more often you practice this retuning, the less the static dominates. When people do sense something, it can be small and quiet. Some report a slight softening at the base of the skull, a tiny seam along the hand, or a warm settling in the chest. Others say they felt a pulsing like a whispered, "Remember." Those are delicate confirmations, not certificates. If you felt a glimmer, treat it like a seed. Feed it with gentle attention, not with frantic expectation. If you feel nothing at all, resist the urge to conclude that the practice is worthless. There are legitimate reasons for absence: fatigue, stress, lack of grounding, or simply the fact that the nervous system sometimes needs time. Return later after rest, or repeat the checks at bedtime when the body is still. Some people experience recognition after repeated, patient practice. Others may never feel a somatic mark in a dramatic way, and yet find that a sense of inner authority develops over months. The process is not an all-or-nothing test. It is an invitation to a new way of listening. If you choose to deepen what you felt, there is an activation you can try that the tradition frames as a short, declarative phrase to voice in the present tense. I offer this as an optional step. You are invited to speak it aloud or silently, only if you feel inclined. Do not rush to expect results. This is a tool to claim interior recognition, not a magic formula. Prepare by returning your attention to the breath. Inhale slowly, exhale slowly. Touch the 3 spots in order: base of the skull, lateral hand, center chest, spending a few breaths at each. When you feel settled and calm, speak, or think, this 9-word declaration in the present tense, with the intention of recognition. I recognize origin, activate perception, declare my command now. Speak it as a gentle authority, not as a demand on reality. If words feel awkward, you may shorten it to a breath and a silence, but the structure, recognition, activation, declaration, is the core. After the declaration, sit quietly for a minute and simply notice. Do not chase a sign. Let whatever emerges be soft. If intrusive or disbelieving thoughts arrive, notice them and return to your breath and to the places you touched. The practice is less about forcing outcomes and more about reorienting attention away from the patterns that have been trained to doubt and toward the bodily impression of source. There is an ethics of sharing here. If, after this practice, you feel something, consider marking it in the comment section with the single word recognition. Do this only if something genuinely stirred. The purpose is not to create numbers or prove anything to anyone. It is to build a quiet community signal so others who are waking can see that this route is being explored. And if you felt nothing, that is equally valid. You may remain silent or share a brief, honest note about your experience. There is no requirement. A few clarifying notes. First, when I refer to the Gospel of Philip or to the Nag Hammadi library, I am pointing to historical documents that record a particular stream of early reflection and practice. These are non-canonical texts. They are not the same as the canonical 4 Gospels, and they should not be taken as replacements for any tradition you value. They provide context for a certain set of metaphors and exercises. Second, the cosmological names, monad, demiurge, archontes, are conceptual tools to describe dynamics of source, structure, and interference. They are not literal accusations against individuals. They name patterns of power and distraction that can be observed in systems that suppress direct verification. Third, be careful with language about guarantee. I cannot promise that you will feel a sign, that this will solve long-standing trauma, or that your life will change overnight. What I can promise is the clarity of a method, slow breath, gentle touch, non-argumentative attention. That method gives you a way to test for recognition inside your body, and it trains you to notice interference when it appears. Over time, trained attention strengthens your ability to perceive subtle inner reality. Practical cautions. Do not press or dig into your body. These are exploratory touches, not attempts to provoke. If you have medical concerns about any part of your body, consult a professional. This practice is about presence and contemplation, not diagnosis. If you are concerned about the idea of sabotage as conspiratorial rhetoric, consider the phrase as a description of attention economy. Distraction is real. Distraction can be amplified by cultural institutions that channel the ways people seek authority. The point here is not to promote paranoia, but to offer an inner countermeasure, a short, embodied protocol that requires no external gatekeeper. If you are wondering whether this teaching is exclusive, it is not. The invitation is universal. Traditions have more than one route to remember. The somatic checks are simply one method, a practical bodily way to confirm that inner relation to source. You are still welcome in other paths of study, prayer, service, or contemplation. This is complementary, not competitive. For those of you who felt a subtle confirmation during the checks, welcome. Treat that confirmation with tenderness. It is a beginning, not a certificate. Cultivate it with attentive practices, quiet sitting, simple breath work, and repeated gentle checks over weeks. Notice when doubt rises and practice the non-engagement with that doubt. In time, many people report that the pattern of interference loosens, not because the archontes are vanquished in some melodramatic way, but because your attention has learned another habit, listening for the source rather than feeding the static. For those who felt nothing, be patient. This is less a test than an introduction to a way of listening. Return another day. Sleep on it. Try the checks in different contexts, after a walk, in the early morning, or before sleep. Consider that the body sometimes requires safety and rest before it will register a subtle signal. You are not less valuable or less awakened because a sensation did not appear on command. Finally, remember the social element. Awakening is rarely only an individual project. It is a reclaiming that often happens in community, quietly and slowly. If you felt something and you wish to let others know, type recognition in the comments. Let that single word be a gentle signal to others that this pathway is being explored. If you want deeper guidance, subscribe or follow this channel to receive further activation practices, reflections, and guidance. There will be more material that explores grounding, dealing with persistent doubt, and how to integrate a growing sense of authority in daily life. Your awakening may be being sabotaged. But sabotage is only one side of the story. The other side is attention. The way you direct your attention can either strengthen interference or reopen memory. Today, you practiced a simple tuning, 3 checks, breath, gentle touch, and an optional 9-word declaration. These are small acts of sovereignty. They do not replace relationship, study, or healing work, but they give you a tool you can use anywhere, alone and safely. Close by, taking 3 slow, deliberate breaths. Rest your hands where they feel natural. If you felt anything at all, even the ghost of a warmth or a soft shift in thought, let that be enough to carry you forward with patience. If you felt nothing, let curiosity remain. Either way, you practiced tuning. That practice is its own reward. If this work spoke to you and you want further guided activations that build on these steps, subscribe to the channel. And if, in this session, something moved you, leave recognition in the comments to quietly mark that you are participating in this experiment of remembering. Remember, The point is not to prove anything to anyone, but to recover a way of listening that honors your body's intelligence and your soul's longing to know its origin.